Hey folks, Alan Saunders with Pittsburgh Sports Now, and I'm joined in our Leon's Billiards Zoom chat by Hunter Homistek. Hunter is a sports journalist in Pittsburgh who covered Pitt Panthers last season for DK Pittsburgh Sports, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. I think it was pretty interesting. Hunter kind of got shoved onto the beat right in the middle of the year, I guess right at the beginning of basketball season, and I think it was fun. I don't know. It was fun for me. Was it fun for you?
Dude, it was super fun. That's what everybody told me. Like you said, I did get kind of shoved into it last minute. Our site wasn't covering Pitt at all at the time. And then right before the basketball season started, we decided to relaunch our Pitt coverage. So they were like, we need somebody to cover Pitt basketball. And that became me. So I got thrown into the fire. This is going to sound super embarrassing. We'll start off with an embarrassing story. How about that? The very first press conference that I attended was my first day on the beat. They brought Audis Tony, definitely Audis, and Trey McGowan's, I think. And I had only briefly watched the team last year. I didn't know who Audis was. I'll admit that. They brought him to the podium. I was like, they say it's Audis Tony. Use my phone real quick. What can I learn about this guy? But then as the season went, man, I became so invested in it, invested in the team, and got to know all the guys really well, as you know. Really good availability with the guys. So it was a really cool experience for me, for sure.
What's going through your head when you're like, I got to cover Pitt basketball? What do I know about Pitt basketball?
Yeah.
I mean, how much did you know about it before you even started covering the team?
Nothing. That's the funny thing. I went to WVU, so what I knew about Pitt was that they eat feces. We'll stick to that. So I know, I knew the players that came through when the rivalries, when the backyard brawl would happen and everything when I was in school. Obviously, I was aware. But I was not closely following Pitt by any means after college. So it was definitely learning on the run, but you get that one press conference a week plus the games, plus the post-game stuff. It was plenty to learn. It didn't take long at all until I felt totally engrossed. But I think in the beginning, you just rely on your fundamentals as a reporter. I always say anybody who's reported on something could go report on marble racing or horse racing, something nothing about, but you just rely on those reporting fundamentals and do a good job, and that's it.
The baseline of our job is asking questions. So, I mean, it's a great way to learn things while you're at it. Sometimes it actually ends up working out for you. You ask some questions that everybody else would kind of maybe roll their eyes at or think that everybody knows what the answer is. But, one of the things I say to people all the time, especially people that I cover, is it doesn't do me any good if I know the answer. Sometimes I got to hear you say it. And so I think sometimes it's actually an advantage to a reporter if they're good and know what they're doing, if they're still learning about the subject a little bit, because you get somebody to explain something to you in a level of detail that they would never explain to me because they know I know that already.
100%, man. I love that you said that because it reminded me. I think I even thanked you down in Florida State when you asked the question to Capel, and we both knew it was going to make him angry, but it had to be asked about the depth of the team. And it's yes, coach, we know the answer, but we need you to say that for us and explain it for us and for our readers. So that to me was the perfect example of journalism and work. I was like, Alan, thank you for falling in that grenade because I didn't want to be the one to ask it.
Well, and that's a good give and take. If you have some younger people on the beat that can ask those sort of maybe sheepish questions where you don't really know the answer and then you have to have some experienced people on the beat that have the sort of relationships built and the trust with the coach that you have to say, I got to ask this question. Somebody has to do it. It's going to be me. So I'll just go and bite the bullet. And yeah, I think that's one of the things that's really people don't see a lot is that so when you're a beat writer, you work for your outlet, I work for my outlet, but we see each other more than we ever see any of our coworkers. And so
Absolutely.
It's really our competitor, coworker, I don't know, that line gets really blurred a lot of the time. And if you have a good beat, I think the Pitt beat is a pretty good beat, a good mix of people and skills. I think it works out really well if you can all get along, and I think that's something that I try to do. But it's a lot of fun when it works like that, where you get to ask a question, then I'll come in and I'll take the tough one, and that's fun. But the other thing I think that people I think there's this perception in people's minds we're just cutthroat and at each other all the time. And that's the farthest thing from the truth.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think everybody knows I used to work for the site that you were covering, you worked for, and, things didn't go well. It doesn't matter. Like, if you're a nice guy and we can get along and you're professional, everybody just gets along for the most part.
Yeah, that's cracked me up because I started working for DK in December of 2018, and I said it to him several times, to DK. I was like, man, what's up with like this 14-year-old middle school vibes I get from some dudes on the beat? Obviously not you, but like, so I'm like, am I back in middle school? Or what's going on here? Like, why is everybody so catty? And he's like, yeah, just keep your head down, do your job, don't worry about that, stay out of that. I'm like, all right, cool, but it's strange, and that was always, that's not me. I'm not a confrontational dude in that regard at all. And you talk about kind of the competitiveness, and it is competitive, but I think I like the way you put it, where it's never really cutthroat. We're never at each other. We're actually like kind of happy for each other when somebody gets a scoop. Like, hey man, good scoop. I've told people several times, good scoop, good story, whatever. It's not that. It's not the way a lot of people see it. And I think a lot of people just want it to be that way because it would be more fun from the outside to watch the journalists be all mad at each other. But it's just not how it is, unfortunately, for them.
Well, I think it is I think that might be one of those generational things where I think it was like that. Like, if you look at the history of Pittsburgh media, where there was two newspapers that were, super competitive against one another. And I don't know, maybe there was a time where it was like that. It certainly hasn't been like that since I've been covering sports here, for me anyway. Like you said, there are certainly some folks that are super competitive or confrontational and things of that nature. But I try to get along with everybody as much as I can, and mostly that's receptive and given back to me by almost everybody. So I think that's kind of fun, like that people don't see. The other thing I think that people don't get is how you can give up your old biases. And as a guy that went to West Virginia covering Pitt, obviously, that was something that you had to go through. Was that the first time you'd had to do it, where you had a team that you cared about, in this case, negatively? Usually it's the other way. Usually it's positive.
For sure.
That you then had to cover as a professional?
Yeah, it wasn't, man, because I was covering Steelers before that.
Okay.
And I grew up a huge Steelers fan. Like, I was very upfront about that when I joined the DK team. So I, like, in my little intro story, I wrote about how, I was wearing black and gold before I knew what that meant. My parents were dressing me up in it before I knew what football was. So I was definitely born into a Steelers household. It's not hard for me to put the biases away. And I think the reason why is because I've always, in everything I've covered, MMA before I got into the Pittsburgh scene, it's always been about the people involved. So I'm just trying to tell their stories, whether it be fighter stories, player story, the basketball. Some of the Pitt stories I wrote were some of my favorite things that I've written as a journalist, because it's a really interesting thing when you get a college athlete. To me, they're adults, but they're still kids in many ways. So it's a really interesting balance. They're not making any money. It's just a very interesting balance with these college athletes. So I loved a lot of those stories. But as far as the biases, it's funny you mentioned that, because I had so many people calling me a Pitt fanboy and stuff like that throughout the season. And I was like, man, if you guys only knew, like, totally not. Nope.
And I think that's one of the things that it's just not a thing. Like, it doesn't matter who you rooted for, where you went. When you start doing the job, it just goes away. I don't know. It's hard to explain, I think, to people that haven't lived it. But like, it's if you take the job seriously, you separate yourself from it. And I think the other thing that makes it really easy to do is that a lot of places, especially from the other side, like you're talking about, you're covering a team that, like, you grew up rooting for. It's like, well, everybody I grew up rooting for is long gone, right? Yeah. I mean, there's nobody, unless I want to go out in the outfield and talk to Manny Sanguian, there's nobody, actually I have done a couple stories where I got to talk to, like, Mike LaValliere at spring training or something like that. But, like, everybody I grew up rooting for is gone. And so then it just becomes this, like, fan allegiance to the laundry a little bit. But then once you get into the building and you start covering the organization, like, who are the Steelers, right? Well, I don't know. Like, it's just a collection of people that then you build individual relationships with professionally. It's like, okay, well, I know who Mike Tomlin is, and I know who, some of the trainers are, and some of the equipment. Like, so, like, the concept of, like, this team, it goes away because it just gets replaced by the people that and that you work with, and that hopefully they trust you to tell their story. Or sometimes the other way. Sometimes it's confrontational. and then it's very easy for it to go away.
Yeah, I think people underestimate how individualized the coverage is, because you talk about covering a team, but it's exactly what you just said. It's really covering a collection of players, which sounds like the dictionary definition for a team, but it's really not in this setting. It is a little different. It's about those relationships you form with the players, and I think that's why me wanting to tell player stories and things of that nature, I am kind of like a player friendly kind of guy, maybe a little looser with my questions. I ask dumb, like, do you like pineapple on pizza questions, because I just want them to loosen up and get to know me a little bit, get to know their personality a little bit. So it's really interesting in that regard. And the bias it's not hard at all. And I wouldn't say like I feel like I felt it the most with the Pirates when I was covering the Pirates a lot, and especially on the road, where you're not a fan, but like they recognize that you're there for them and they kind of respect that. Like they appreciate that you're on the road covering that. So they will be friendly with you. And it feels like, oh, okay, like I can just be loose with Joe Musgrove right now. He's chill. Like we're just going to talk about coffee or whatever. It doesn't even have to be about baseball. So it's not, and in that way, you don't really become a fan of the team. But like I'd be lying if I didn't want Joe Musgrove to go out and have a good outing, because it's like I like this guy. I like this dude as a person. I want you to succeed in life. So you do feel it that way. But the next layer of it, I think, that prevents bias and fan cheering from creeping in at all is people completely underestimate how busy the job is when you're covering a game. You don't have time to cheer or be a fan. You just don't.
No, there's no time to do anything really, except for rain delays, and then nobody's. But like, I think that's like the thing is that the differentiation between the team and the individuals. Like, somebody asked me like, "Oh, do you want the Pirates to win?" And I'm like, "No, I really don't care." Like, the Pirates go out. If I'm covering a Pirates game and the Pirates lose 10-2 or win 10-2 or win on a walk-off, it doesn't really matter to me, except for the walk-off is the worst one, because that's the pain in the butt to write. But like, I don't really care. But if you ask me like, well, do you want Jameson Taillon to get healthy and pitch again? Well, yeah. Like, do you want Josh Bell to have a good season? Well, yeah. I was like, well, if you want those things, like, how do you not want the Pirates to win? I was like, well, it's different. Like, I care about those people and I hope they succeed, but I don't really care if it happens in a team fashion. Like, I'm super happy for Garrett Cole, a guy that I covered for the Pirates for a long time, and he goes to Houston and wins a championship, and now he's going cashing big paychecks from the Yankees. He's just had a son. Great. I'm ecstatic for Gary. He never won anything as a Pirate. That doesn't bother me. Like, like that's where I think like the team melts away when you have a relationship with all of the parts of it. I think that's the part that people miss.
It absolutely does. And to tie it back to Pitt for a second, I think that's what really appeals to me with the college athletes is when you think about what's on the table for them, and especially dudes like Xavier Johnson who are talking about going to the NBA, before last year, when you've got those kind of stakes on the table. Of course, these professional athletes have high stakes too. One bad preseason game can spell the end for a fringe roster guy on the Steelers. Everything matters for them as well. But when you're talking about taking that next level from college to the pros, I think those are completely different stakes. So that's what makes that really interesting to me. And like you said, like, it's not so much I'm rooting for Xavier Johnson, but would I like to see a guy from Pitt ascend to the NBA? An unheralded guy comes into Pitt with a new head coach and makes it to the NBA. Of course, that's a really cool storyline that would be super fun to cover. Just selfishly, that's a fun story to cover. So I want to cover that. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're not covering Pitt now. What do you got going on?
Man, I launched my own site. So I've actually felt this for a long time, wanting to start my own thing. My skill set is super weird, man. I have a degree in journalism, but I also do a lot of SEO, digital marketing, social media, things like that. And I had always worked with clients on the side, helping them in those realms. So I just thought, like, I'm just going to package myself up, make my services available to people, get a little client base, and just do my own thing at my own speed. Because as you know, the business is crazy, man. I was just talking about it with my dad today. I went golfing with my dad today at Moon Golf Club, and we were talking to Josh, the owner there. And my dad was like, "Can you believe this is the first time I golfed with my son in 3 years?" And I was shaking my head. I'm like, man, he's right. Like, he's right. It's the first time we golfed together in 3 years because I haven't been able to do anything else. And the hustle is great in journalism. I think people don't, whenever you have a story and you're breaking news or you're breaking a good story and you're just on the beat and you're crushing it, it's a really different kind of rush.
It's
thrill.
addicting.
It is. It truly is addicting. Like, really? Anybody who's ever done it will understand what's thrilling about that. But at the same time, man, I really needed to step back, focus on my family and me, and take care of that. And and it's been awesome so far. I already have several clients lined up. We're rolling on the site. It's homistek.com there, my little watermark. If you guys want to hit me up, you can there. But yeah, man, it's been really cool to step back and really evaluate what matters, and just focus on me and building my own thing right now. So that's what I got going on right now.
Yeah, the grind is unbelievable. I mean, it never stops. There's never a day off, and there's never a minute off. I think that's the underrated part of it, is that like you don't ever have any control over what affects your life. I can remember very vividly Easter Sunday. I was sitting in my mom's house in like the formal living room in like a very stuffy chair, sideways with my laptop on the armrest, breaking news about Pitt hiring Kevin Stallings because it's on Easter, and the beat does not care what day it is. Like, there will be news at all hours, all times, all days. It doesn't matter what you had planned. It doesn't matter where you wanted to go, wanted to be, what you wanted to do. Shit happens, and then you gotta write about it, no matter when it is. And that is not only do you have to work hard when you're at practice or at a game to turn around stories and transcribe things and capture what you just saw, but it never turns off, and it's exhausting. It really is.
Dude, you were telling that Easter story, and the whole time I was hoping, I'm like, please let it at least be a cool story that he's working on.
Cool story.
The least holy hiring ever happened on Easter. That's beautiful. But man, you nailed it. You nailed it hard there. It's not a minute off. People, that's what I like. I always kind of got laughs from my friends who work maybe in construction and things like that. Like, oh, you're working hard, right? And I'm like, dude, it's like a totally different kind of work. I understand this isn't physical labor, but mentally it wears on you like nothing else, because you're constantly tuned in. You don't have a minute off. And it's like you said, if you're hanging out with your family and news breaks, you can't be like, let me finish this hot dog and I'll get to it. You just can't, because by the time you finish that hot dog, Post-Gazette got it, you guys got it, everybody else got it, and now you're left behind because you wanted to eat a hot dog instead, and you have to justify that, and you can't. You just can't in your own head justify that. So the grind is so different, man.
And then throw travel on top of it. I think that's the thing. Like, travel is exhausting in this job because there's no time to do it. And so I'm like, people talk about like, especially baseball, like go to every baseball game for a team in a season. Just try it. Just try to show it. Don't throw the ball. Don't hit the ball. You don't even have to run. Just do the travel and show up at the ballpark for every minute that a professional ball player or member of the media is required to be there for an entire season, and you will understand what fatigue means.
You can't do it. And on the road, I get a lot of people, when we travel, hey, man, let's meet up for a beer here, or let's meet up.
All right, I'll be there at 4 a.m. for 9 minutes.
I always feel so bad telling them no, because I'm like, man, like I appreciate that you're reaching out and you recognize, hey, he's in my city. I want to say what's up. And believe me, I would love to say what's up to you too. What most people don't understand is the game starts at, let's say, 7:05. You have to be there at 3 for the manager's meeting. Like, you have to get in there that early, 3, to talk to the manager. Last year it was Clint, obviously, to talk to Clint. And then between 3 and 7, you don't have time to meet somebody because you're working on a story that came out of that manager's meeting. So by the time you file that story, the game's about to start. Okay, you got to just sit chill, maybe grab something to eat real fast. Now you got the game's over. You go downstairs, you do your interviews, you write your post-game story, you transcribe first, and we all know that transcribing is actually the work of the devil. Like,
the only part of the job I actually hate.
It's so bad. It is the actual worst, yeah. So transcribe, write your story, and hey, man, let's meet for a beer at 4 a.m. Are you still up?
Yeah. I mean, and then sometimes I'm writing the next story. Like, I'll be writing the story for tonight, and then I got to turn around and write another because I don't want to wake up at 7 a.m. to write the next one. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. Whenever you like add flights into the equation, sometimes you got a morning flight, you're finishing up your game story at 3 a.m. It's not even worth going to sleep at that point. Yeah, just go to the airport and wait there. Like, it's such a weird schedule that I think people don't understand and maybe don't appreciate. The people who do it certainly understand it and appreciate it, but the average fan, I don't think, understands how hard being a beat reporter actually is. And to be frank, I've never wanted to be a beat reporter in my life ever. And I've been very clear about that, including like when I was put on Pitt and Pirates and things of that nature. I was like, listen, this is never what I want to do. This isn't my lifestyle. I like doing different things. Like I loved when I was covering Pitt, Steelers, Pirates, like a little bit of everything, and doing, some podcasts, some TV, some stuff like that. I love being in all kinds of different directions. So that's what I like to do. But like that bulldog, old school beat writer, that's a different kind of dude, man. That mentality is a different kind of world.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm good at it. I've been doing it for a while. I don't know if I love it though. I tell you what, I do love. I love it when the 6 years I've been. Has it really been that long? Jesus, 5
Damn.
years, 6
Just
years.
dated yourself big time.
6 years I've been doing this, but I love the days where it pays off,
Yeah.
and I'm like, I got this story that no one else would have ever gotten because I've been doing this and I already understand. I already know these people, and here it is. I got it. Like I got a hand wrap. I got a gift wrapped handed to me. Like I didn't have to do anything for it. And those days it feels good. There are other days where it's like I can't believe I'm still doing this shit. Like that, but I feel like I'm pretty lucky in that I've gotten to bounce around a good bit. Like my primary beat has been Pitt, but I cover some Duquesne, I cover some Robert Morris, I cover the Pirates, cover some Steelers. I get to go wherever I want pretty much. And that's like you said, like that really is fun when you get to go and do different things and talk to different people. And that's one of the fun parts of the job.
It truly is, man. Don't sell yourself short. Literally everywhere I've been, I've seen you at games. So you're doing everything for sure.
I don't know
Every
the
sport.
Penguins. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, funny enough, I never covered Penguins either. But I would have liked to. Maybe in my future there's some Penguins covered.
A couple times. Not too often.
Yeah, man. You touched on something interesting there, though, with the one story that makes the payoff worth it, because I think that's kind of that rush that we're talking about. It's kind of like this: if I handed you a pack of 20 scratch-off lottery tickets and told you one of that last one's going to win you $200, whatever, in amount, you would scratch them all. Like, absolutely. That's how the job is. It's like, I know I'm going through the motions for like a lot of this, and it's a lot of stuff that I don't want to do, but I know that there's light at the end of the tunnel. There's that pot of gold. So that's exactly how it feels. And you're right, man. You get that one story that you just get, whether it's news or just a great story, a good quote. My thing is a good quote. When I get a good quote, man, I like feel myself light up. I'm like, there's my headline. There's my story. Like, we're golden.
Yeah. I love that feeling. And I love, the other thing is I love when people trust you to tell a difficult story. I think that is one of the greatest honors that you can have as a journalist, is when somebody you cover will let you tell something that's not easy. And I remember I was covering the Pirates a couple of years ago, and when things started to get really bad in Venezuela, and I talked to Francisco Cervelli, I talked to Elias Diaz, and those guys really opened up to me in a big way about a difficult. Elias Diaz's mother ends up getting kidnapped like 9 months after my story ran. They really opened up to me about a super sensitive, nothing to do with baseball, super sensitive, super personal story. And I think it turned out to be one of the best stories I ever wrote on that beat. But that's really rewarding when you have someone that will trust you with that kind of story. And that's big to me.
Man, that's awesome. I've never personally had something like that happen, but I can imagine the feeling is awesome. Like the closest I would say that I've come is kind of when I was covering the Steelers, obviously they had DK was covering the Steelers a little bit, but also Dale Lawley, who has like 8,000 years on the beat. I think something, maybe 8,002. I'm not sure. I could be a little off.
As long as they're famous Steelers.
Longer than I've been alive, I think Dale has been covering the Steelers. So yeah, it was crazy. So I knew I had to find like a different way around. Like I wasn't going to get by just covering the normal stuff. So whenever the rookies came in and the new free agents like Steven Nelson, Mark Barron, the Dante Moncrief, I made it my mission to just like get acclimated with the new guys, all the rookies. Like the first day of rookie OTAs, I think I had a separate, mini feature on each of the rookies. So like that was kind of my thing. And throughout the season is when you start to see that pay off. Like I formed pretty close relationships with both Benny Snell and Devin Bush. And I noticed like they would give, even in scrums, I noticed when I asked a question, they would like light up a little more and give me a little more. And the athletes definitely notice that, man. People think like they don't read what you write online or they don't care. They absolutely, they're at that level because their mental is crazy. They're obsessed, and they're obsessed with reading about it as well. And it pays off in a big way like that. So definitely nothing to the level of like the Cervelli and Elias Diaz stuff, but I feel kind of what you're talking about there for sure.
Yeah, I thought you did a really good job with Devin Bush last year. He was not like an easy guy to get to open up like that, and he definitely did to you.
Yeah, thanks, man. He wasn't. It was, and again, something silly, like you said, somebody fresh on the beat would have to do. It was when I started asking him to predict the games, and he nailed like 4 in a row, like to a T. It was so ridiculous. And then that was when like ESPN and Bleacher Report, Sports Illustrated, like everybody was picking up those videos and just making it go viral. I was like, man, this is crazy. That the stupidest idea I have. Hey Devin, how do you think the defense will do this week? Like of all the questions I could ask,
You ever asked?
yeah, right. But that's the one that hits. So that's the game, man, and that's the balance. Because I mean, you guys understand as well on the business side, being part subscriptions, part advertising. You need to get the page views, but you also need to balance that with content that's worth paying for, and it's a very interesting balance in today's digital world. So sometimes it's a dumb question that gets you the buku page views, and sometimes you got to dig deeper for the subscriptions. But man, that's the fun of it for me.
So what you got on your site? You've had some fun stuff with food. We're talking about crock pots, which I'm a big thumbs down. What do you got lined up? What's coming? What can we look for?
So I'm looking for all these shootouts, man. I did Popeyes chicken sandwich versus Chick-fil-A, and I loved that, and the reception was really good on that. People love it. People love debating that still. We actually just got Popeyes tonight here at the house too, so you can get. I actually picked Chick-fil-A.
Popeyes there, I think.
Yeah, yeah. But I want to start digging into more stuff like that first. I want to do like some local brewery IPA shootouts, I'm thinking. Local pizza shootouts, I'm thinking. Local wing shootouts. All the typical stuff, but I just want some slick production value. Maybe invite some friends. If you want to come over, man, and eat some pizza with me.
All right, yeah.
Yeah.
I've never been more qualified to fill a duty.
The experts pick. You'll be like Stump the Schwab. You'll be our ringer in this pizza shoot. Alan, who won? Alan.
That's good stuff. And you know what's funny is that like I see the audience for that. I mean, like I tweet about sports, it's my job, but like I've never been the kind of person that like takes myself so seriously that I try to have fun on social media. So like I tweet about everything. I tweet about fishing, I tweet about fried chicken sandwiches, and like people love that stuff. They love that stuff just as much as they love following me for Pitt news, and because
absolutely
I can understand what war is and I cover the pirates, and like that they like there's like a real audience for that stuff. So I think that's cool. It's sort of it's natural, right? You learn all the skills that we have to do this job, which have like exponentially increased since I started doing it. Like to be a good beat reporter, you have to be a reporter. You have to be a great writer. You're basically your own editor half the time. You got to take your own pictures. You got to shoot your own video, edit your own video. You're on doing all your own social media. Like the job just. But once you're good at all those things, you can kind of do whatever you want.
Yeah, that I mean, exactly what you just said is what hit me. Is like I'm doing all these things anyway. I can get paid to do this on my own and maybe build it bigger and different than I'm getting here, because it felt like I was kind of starting to get in a rut a little bit where I was just kind of doing the same things over and over. The redundancy of the job was the one thing that I never loved. I that's just like I said earlier. I love being split up in different ways. Sometimes I want to talk about a chicken sandwich or go fishing, like you said. Just do silly stuff like that. Have
fun. Talk about golf all day, like you did today.
Talk about golf all day. Just I'm more multifaceted than just sports, and that's something that weighed on me for a very long time. So that was really what eventually pushed me out to do my own thing. Was like, I'm just letting all my other passions die, man. I used to play guitar at least an hour a day. I mean, when I was a teenager and all through high school and early college, I think I failed out of my honors college because of guitar. So that's a fun nugget there. I lost my full ride scholarship. Sorry, Mom. I lost my scholarship because I would rather play guitar than go to class. So, and sometimes I would look back and the guitars are just collecting dust. And I'm like, what am I doing here? Like, I don't even play guitar anymore. I don't do anything that's me. It's just work, 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 work. At some point I had to draw the line, and I was just like, man, it's enough. It's time to get back to being me and having some fun with life again.
Well, I'm really happy for you. It seems like you're enjoying it. I'm excited to see what you do with your site. I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And thanks for joining us. And maybe you can come moonlight on the Pit Beat every once in a while again, so we can hang out or something like that. Or maybe we'll cover some UFC or something like that. When are they coming
There
back
we
to
go.
Pittsburgh?
There we go, man. I would love that. If the fights come back, if UFC comes back to Pittsburgh, I'm all in on that. Or anything. Pitt, I still love these sports, man. And as you know, I'm sure the listeners have noticed throughout the talk, I'm passionate about the sports themselves and the players. I still love it. It's not like I don't want to cover the Steelers or Pitt or Pirates anymore at all. It's just that I understood that my path to getting where I wanted to go was going to take, a different road. So I had to carve that out. So here we are, man. But yeah, for sure, I hope our paths cross, and for sure on the pizza or the wings or something, we got to get you
We'll
involved.
do something like that for sure. I got some
Yeah.
got some wheels turning here. But
There we go.
thanks for joining me. I really appreciate it. And as always, our Zoom calls are sponsored by Leon's Billiards. And thanks for watching Pittsburgh Sports Now. And thanks again to Hunter, who's a great young journalist and super talented. I'm seriously excited for what you're doing, and I'm going to be watching it closely because I hope you succeed.
Thanks,
And,
man. That means a ton to me. And same to you guys. I'm still going to be reading all your stuff. Don't worry.
All right. I'm Alan Saunders. Thanks to everyone for watching. As always, we'll do this again next week. And stay with PSN.